Hello and welcome to another edition of the Osceola's Reeling Them In Recruiting Report. My name is Pat Burnham and I'll be your host today, and I'll be joined by Osceola recruiting analyst Charles Fishbein. We're also going to be joined by Osceola football analyst Mark Salva today, because what we're going to do, in addition to talk with Fish about recruiting, we're going to kind of combine this. You got hybrid running backs, receivers, hybrid receivers, tight ends, hybrid linebackers, safeties. We're going to be a hybrid recruiting / tailgate show. So we're going to talk a little bit about recruiting with Fish, get with Mark and Fish on wrapping up LSU, talk a little bit about last weekend's game, both in the ACC and nationally, and talk about this weekend's games, and then obviously look ahead to Louisville. But guys, thanks for joining me.
Great, man.
Let's talk some ball.
All right, Fish. Want to get caught with you in recruiting. I know that you have seen FSU offered a 2023 wide receiver by the last name of Joseph, I believe, and you have seen him. Can you tell us a little bit about that offer? Obviously, Florida State is still in search of some skilled players on offense.
I had a chance to watch Chaminade play like 2 weeks ago against a top-ranked St. John's team out of Washington, D.C., and they already have two big-time receivers for 2024 on their team, Chaminade, and it was Edwin Joseph that stood out. Not only is he a very good wide receiver, but a lot of people think he could be an Xavier Rhodes-type corner where he's a first-round pick down the road. And, pretty much anybody you speak to down here respects the kid a lot. I mean, he really stood out in a game where there was a lot of stars on the field. The defensive end for the St. John's team was committed to Clemson. He went up against a kid that was committed to Oregon and had his way. So Joseph's a kid that is probably going to end up going from barely ranked to a legitimate high 4-star kid because of his performances early on this year.
All right. Well, and you think that's a committable offer from Florida State if he were to?
Yeah, there's no doubt that you got to take that kid's commitment now. I mean, just from a receiver standpoint, I think he would be right now before, if we're going to talk about it later, but if he were to commit, he would be their top receiver in their class right now.
All right. Well, another kid down in your neck of the woods, American Heritage High School, Damari Brown, a 2023 4-star defensive back, has announced his Final Four of Miami, FSU, Clemson, and Alabama. He has set an official visit for Miami sometime in September. He's going to go sometime in September. Has already been to Clemson and Auburn. Just reading the tea leaves, it sounds like he's really high on Clemson and Alabama, and FSU and Miami right now might be in the second position behind those two, or the third and fourth positions behind those two. He did say he's going to take an official visit to Florida State at some point this season. What are your thoughts on Damari as a player and FSU's chances?
Yeah, I mean, Damari is one of those players that you and Mark can chime in on it. When you go to meet Damari, he's one of probably the 5 or 6 most impressive players down here. Like he looks like a Sunday player, not a Saturday player, but a future Sunday player. He's big, he's athletic, he's long. He just looks different. And I always say the guys that you could go to these schools and anybody could pick them out. He's one of those guys that just stands out the moment you meet him. I saw him during media day. Him, Hakeem Williams, the running back from Heritage that's committed to Ohio State. There was about 4 or 5 of those guys that just look different than everybody else, and he's one of those guys. And he's someone that could come in and contribute day one.
All right. Well, I want to ask you about an update on another guy, a defensive tackle from your area, Ruben Bain, who has already visited Oklahoma, Auburn, and Alabama. And the other schools reportedly involved are FSU, Miami, USC, and Louisville. Do you think Florida State will get an official visit from Ruben before it's all said and done?
Yeah, I definitely think Florida State. He's taken a couple visits up to Florida State. From my understanding, there are people close to him that do want him to get out of Miami. And that's why I think Florida State does have a shot. He's not your typical defensive end. He's in that 6'2" range. He's probably about 240, 235, 240 now. But he's so explosive and quick, fast twitch off the ball. He's a pass rusher. And how everybody's looking for elite pass rushers. He can get after the quarterback.
I'm on a call.
I mean, he dominated parts of the IMG game. So that should just tell you he's going against top-rated offensive linemen and had a great performance against one of the premier programs in the country. As Central upset IMG earlier this year. But Bain's very, very underrated. I think he's a top 10, 12 player in the state, and you're talking a borderline 5-star. If he was 6'4", he's probably one of the top 2 or 3 defensive ends in the country.
All right, then another defensive back from IMG Academy 2023 defensive back, Jarvis Lee, who had been committed to Virginia for quite some time, has decommitted and has opened up his recruitment. And Florida State is one of those schools that is considered to be involved with Jarvis, as is Miami, Florida, and Georgia Tech. What are your thoughts on Jarvis as a player and obviously Florida State's chances moving forward?
Yeah, one thing you can tell with their DB recruiting is that Randy has a big influence on that in their defensive back room. Is they're looking at a lot of the same type of guys, real long, athletic, above 5'11" type corners. He's another one of those guys that I think he's 5'11" or 6 feet, but Randy's more into the bigger corners, and I think that they're pushing that in that room. You could tell the way this kid comes up and plays. He's very good against the run. He's an aggressive player. He's got good technique, and he's got all the tools to be a very good corner. And he's got that versatility. That's my biggest concern when you're recruiting DBs. You don't want a guy that could just play one position, because if he can't play multiple positions and isn't versatile, if he can't play that one position, then you're stuck with a dead weight on your roster. You want those guys that can maybe play outside or slide him into the slot. And he's one of those guys that can play multiple positions on the back end of the defense.
All right. And then, of course, Randy Pittman has been or was committed to Florida State, the 2023 tight end out of Panama City Mosley High School. He's made, he's taken some visits. He's been on an official visit to UCF, strong interest in Mississippi State from both sides there. Based on everything he said, and he's talked with Ryan Wright from Rivals in the last couple of days. He makes it sound like Florida State is still a definitive leader. He made the comment that he compares all schools to FSU that he is involved with, the on-campus experience, the coaches, all of that kind of stuff. What are your thoughts on Pittman as a player and, obviously taking these official visits and reopening his recruitment?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've agreed that Pittman's a really good player. He's not your prototypical tight end. They just need to improve that room. I mean, they've got a lot of bodies, but I think that you go look, his game is very similar to the kid that played at Pitt last week, that University of Pitt played West Virginia, and they moved the kid to running back. They could put him at H-back. They could move him out as a tight end or split him out wide. He's a very versatile kid, and he's got good hands, and he's got better speed than people think. They need to improve that room. I think for Mike Norvell's offense to be working at its highest levels, you saw it especially at the Memphis, when he was at Memphis. He likes to incorporate his tight ends a lot. I think Pittman would improve that room, and that's the one thing you want to do. You want to get it better, and he would improve that room if he comes back on board.
All right, and then probably the thing that we're hearing the most about the last couple of days is yesterday Blake Nicholson, the 2023 linebacker from California, announced that he will be committing to either Florida State, UCLA, or Oregon on September 20th. This summer, before the season started, you and I both were in agreement that it looked like it's going to be Florida State is where Nicholson will end up committing to. I still believe that's where he's going. What are your thoughts on Blake and FSU's chances to land his commitment on September 20th?
Well, I mean, they got everything from that IL down. So, I mean, he's getting what he wants. And, he's a kid that has been leaning to Florida State for a while. I always am a little bit on the conservative side when it comes to kids from California or out of state because they have to travel so far. But the one thing is his parents are supposedly going to move with him wherever he goes. So that alleviates some of those concerns. But he's taken a long time. So, you always are going to get a little skeptical when a kid keeps pushing his commitment back. But now that, he's going to make it official. I like FSU's chances a lot with him.
I do too. And, Mark, we want to bring Mark into the conversation now. We're kind of going to mesh reeling them in and the Osceola Tailgate together here. But Mark, when I hear, and we see a lot more of it than we ever had before, right? Tua Tagovailoa's parents moved from Hawaii to Tuscaloosa. We've seen the offensive lineman that is now with the Dolphins from Lake City, Columbia, that went to Ole Miss. His family moved from Lake City to Oxford with him. We've seen it, and just in not judging or anything, but it's when you're a coach and you find out that the parents are moving with the player. how does that make you feel? I mean,
you do you do what you need to do, and you deal with it later.
Yeah,
and some guys have more tolerance for that kind of thing than others. Let's be honest. I did not have a high tolerance for that kind of thing. I can tell you that.
Yeah, the kid from Clemson, his parents moved from California or Hawaii to Clemson too. That's why they landed him. So
yeah, you see a lot more of that than you used to. I mean, it used to be your parents put you in the car, took you and dropped you off, and said, "We'll see you next summer."
Well, with NIL now, that becomes a little more interest from the parents, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, they're probably taking their agent's cut.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, hey, and. It's a big week for FSU. All the coaches are on the road on Thursday and Friday, catching high school games, continuing to build relationships with prospect and high school coaches. Mark, start with you. How does a coaching staff leverage a big win on the recruiting trail right after that win even their communications?
Well, it's funny because whatever situation you're presented with as a recruiter, you spin it to your advantage. I can tell you from experience, it's a lot easier when you win. You're not having to spin about building culture and, we need you to fill holes. And this is more like, all these things we've been talking about up to this point, you can see the results. And, it doesn't make a liar or a charlatan out of you or some kind of, you know what I mean? It gives you credibility to say these things I've been telling you are really happening in this program. And you know what? The kids can figure that out too, because you present it with much more enthusiasm and excitement, just because it's just natural. I mean, you just feel that as a coach. So, it's obviously you always want to work from a position of strength. And this definitely puts the recruiters in a position of strength to go into high schools and again, just reinforce with the coaches, with those around the kid, with the kid themselves, that there's a definite culture change going on. You're starting to see the results, but we need to keep building and build more depth and get Florida State back to where we're supposed to be.
Fish, in your conversations with high school coaches this week or even players, has the Florida State win been a big part of those conversations, and has it helped change maybe the perception of the direction of the program?
Yeah, for sure. I just think in general, coaches and players want to see results. You could sit there and say, hey, we're improving.
Yeah.
But a win's a win. I said last week, I said last week that, they just needed a W. It didn't matter if it was 1 point or 30 points. You could sell your program as much as you want, but you got to win. And they did. And I definitely think, you have a lot more juice going on the recruiting trail this week than you did 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, even 2 months ago. So I definitely think they'll win.
What about a 1 point that should have been 30 points? How does that play?
It doesn't matter. Listen, they dominated the game. I mean, people still watch, but at the end of the day, it's a W. Nobody's going to look back a month from now and go, did they win by 30 or they won by 1? They're going to just look at that W beside that game. So that's a big part.
I'm just trying to.
Yeah, when it comes to against a quality opponent, you take them any way you can get it, right? But to your point, that game should not have come down to the last drive. I mean,
the last kick.
Yeah, the field goal in the first half. Listen, I have more of an issue with not kicking the field goal in the first half than I do the play calling on the goal line. Now, he said that Mike Norvell said in practice is one of the first plays they ran was that pitch play in practice on Wednesday. So he's not going to take it out of the playbook. And he said he's really listen. And we've talked about this. You guys remember the old game with the Giants and Eagles in the 1970s where Pasharsik hands the ball off.
Patrick, in 1987, we're playing Nebraska in the Fiesta Bowl. Remember that? Or the 88 Fiesta Bowl.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yes. Nebraska's driving down to just like we were, driving down to secure the game. They're ahead, by like 4 points.
Yeah, I believe it's 28-24 at the time.
Yeah, and they hand the ball off, and Odell jacks the center up. The guy runs into him. The ball's fumbled. It was a handoff right there on the 1 yard line. We get the ball and go 99 to win the game. I mean, whether you hand it off or pitch it, and if you look, if you take 3 knees and decide to kick the field goal, who's to say they don't block the field goal or we muff the snap or something like that? I mean, you can't call plays being scared. You just can't. You got to. What's the best play for this situation? What have we practiced? What have we executed? In the course of practice, what's in our plan? You got to stick to the plan. If that play was in their game plan and they've practiced it, then run it. It's in the queue. You can run that play.
Yeah. My only thing with them, Mark, is that it looked odd coming out of Jordan's hand. It didn't look. I don't know. It didn't look comfortable throw the pitch the way they did it.
Yeah, usually, they didn't execute it. No question, they didn't execute it.
I mean, usually the quarterback, turns his back and then tosses it over, or like it just seemed. It almost seemed forced, like he was thinking about it too much.
I got to relook at that because there was something odd about. You're right. There's something odd about the way he came out. Maybe he reversed out the wrong way or something like that.
It almost looked like he tried to do like an option pitch, but he did it with both hands. It just was very odd. It didn't look comfortable.
When I first saw it, and I said this on sidelines, the way he came out, it kind of froze the linebackers. Because it was kind of weird the way he did it. Now I didn't know if that was by design or that was an accident. And again, I haven't looked at, I hadn't really studied it to kind of ferret out what that was. Be that as it may, the bottom line is, I think the cheap take is to say, well, you should have handed the ball off, or you should have done this, should have done that. It's easy to criticize when you know the result,
right?
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, like I said though, it almost looked like Jordan wanted to pitch it, wasn't sure if the running back was in the right. The whole play seemed broken from the start. Like it seemed uncomfortable looking when they basically tossed the ball. There was something that went wrong. Either the running back wasn't in the right spot and he hesitated. It all seemed to go wrong from the beginning. So,
well, it looked like it was in a good place for him to catch it. He just lifted his eyes before he caught it. That's what it looked like to me at first glance. I don't know. But bottom line is there was a nice bubble there. He would have scored, walked in, from what I saw, and, whatever. But I guess the point is we can sit here and talk about was it the right call or not. And I have a hard time criticizing knowing the result.
Yeah, well, and listen, at the end of the day, they did what it took to win the ball game. That's all.
And that's all it matters.
All about. And the 2 big special teams plays were the biggest of the game. The field goal in the first half by Jared Verse turned out to be so huge as the game moved along and ended the way it did. But a great victory. And I want to ask both of you this, and Mark, I've kind of covered this with you, but Fish, this is really the first time you and I have talked Florida State LSU. How did that reset your expectations for what you think of this team moving forward? And Fish is getting held up. Mark, I'll throw that back to you. I know we've talked about it a little bit, but what are your expectations for, after that game? Well,
I don't know that they've changed tremendously. I said on the Sidelines podcast that, when you look at rosters of teams that we play on our schedule, you're going to be hard pressed to find a better roster. I mean, Clemson's got probably a better defense. They're better quarterbacks we're going to face. Maybe a better passing game, better running game, whatever. But as far as a total roster of talent, you're not going to find a much better one than the one we just played. And that leads me to believe personnel-wise, we match up pretty good with who we play. So can we play to that level consistently is going to be the big question. Yep. And history tells us we're going to have injuries. History tells us we're going to have games where we're not at our best. So, is 7-5, 8-4, can we go 9-3? Somewhere in that range, I think.
Well, and of course you mentioned injury, and one of the guys that really stepped up in the LSU game was Jasden Turntine, the South Carolina transfer, who filled in for Bless Harris, who we learned this week is more than likely out for the season with listed to be an arm or shoulder injury. So you're right that, and I think we wondered, we saw Florida State's defense early in practice get the better of the offensive line on a pretty regular basis. And as the camp went on, the offensive line played better and better in pass protection specifically. But I think what we've learned is that defensive line that Florida State has got might have been the best of the two defensive lines in that ball game, and that what we've been seeing is this FSU offensive line going against a very good defensive line in practice. And I don't know what your thoughts on who you thought the better defensive line is in that game, but I really thought that you could see where the level of competition in practice with this particular team paid benefits against LSU.
Oh, there's no doubt. In fairness to LSU, they lost their two best defensive linemen too. One to injury, one to targeting. So they were down in their depth chart too. But all that being said, our defensive line accounted for themselves very well. And I think the surprise for me was how well Verse flashed in the kind of plays that he made. Like I said before, we knew he had the athletic ability. We didn't know if he had the playmaking ability. And, again, he went against a true freshman, for a big part of that game. And that had a lot to do with it. Still, he's out there and he's on scholarship. So, he's the best they got. And, I'm very excited about prospects moving forward. Hopefully, again, the injury bug is the thing that worries you, because our depth, although better than it's been, is still not great. And if we get a few more in some of those key positions up front, on both sides of the ball, we're going to start getting deep into our depth chart.
Yeah. Well, listen, and I think we talked about this on Monday when we taped Seminole Sidelines. I know we all had high hopes for Jared Verse, and we kind of temper our expectations because you can't expect him to be Jermaine Johnson. And let's face it, he's not. They're two different type. They're similar in some ways, but they're two different type players than others. But I think he's exceeded all of our expectations, as has Tatum Bethune. And then, of course, Jordan Travis, he had the best game of his career. He made plays with his feet and completed 8 of 12 passes on third down. And, listen, it was a great win. Now, as I've said all along, the Louisville game to me was always going to be the most important game, because you either are going to have to show that you can handle success if you beat LSU, which is what they're going to have to show, or you're going to have to respond to adversity after a loss. A lot of people thought LSU was the most important game. What are your thoughts? And we'll talk more about Louisville next week, but what are your thoughts as a former coach on, making sure that there's not just sigh of relief? We've heard a couple FSU players say we're back. We've heard a couple FSU players say we have the best defensive line in the country. How do you, as a coach, stop the team from being a little bit overconfident coming out of that game?
As a coach, it's a great situation to be in, honestly, because, you get to get on them really hard and try to temper some of that stuff, right? You got to humble them every day in practice. And that means, as a coach, you got to bring the juice. You got to raise your standards, even higher, and hold players to that standard. Don't give an inch. Don't let anything go. You've got their attention. They've had some success. It's a good, again, you're in a position of strength as a coach, and that's a good place to be. So, I remember as a player, after a big win, that's when the coaches were always hardest. That's when Wayne McDuffie would really be honest. That's when your dad was just going nuts, and Mickey and all of them, right? That was, it was to kind of humble us, keep feet on the ground, and continue to build on the success that we had. And that's a good place to be as a coach, because that's where you want to be, for sure.
Fish, just your final thoughts on the LSU game and how it reset your expectations for this season.
Yeah, they played a lot better than I thought. Until somebody proves it, I'm always a skeptical type of person, and with stuff like that. And listen, I was wrong on I liked Verse a lot, but I thought week 7, week 8, is when you start seeing those type of performances like you saw because of how raw he was. But he exceeded expectations. But like Mark also said, he's a grown man that went against a high school kid, and it makes a big difference whether you're Division I or 1AA when you have that experience. And that's why when everybody sits there and they go, oh, well, Julian Armella could play as a freshman, I don't think people realize how difficult it is for offensive linemen, especially to play as freshmen. You got to be really, really special because the guy opposite you is a grown man that's been there, is probably 21 years old right now, 22, you're 18. There's a big difference. It takes time to get to that level, to play at this level, at a high level. And they exceeded my expectations. I really thought the game would be close, but until they win a game like that, you never know which way it's going to go. I actually thought for the first time in a while, FSU had a shot to win a game like this, and they did pull it out. So it's a huge win all around. I think the coaching staff deserves a lot of credit. I think the players do. And as far as expectations, listen, once you win and you start the season, you now got to go into every game expecting to win every one of them. That's just how it is. I mean, people go, oh, well, just because we thought the team may go 7-5 or 8-4, now that they've proven themselves, hey, listen, one at a time, and you go to win every one. That's got to be the mentality of this football team.
Confidence is a strange thing when it comes to football teams, and you're right. They might be in store for something that we did not expect in a very positive way.
Well, you know how it is when those mental blocks that you have as a team, right? The teams, you talk about team psychology, getting over the hump collectively on a situation like that. I mean, it's not easy. I mean, how many times do we have wide rights and, drop 2-point conversions against Miami to just get over that hump as good as we were, right? That mental block of finally getting over it. And when you finally do, I mean, the floodgates open because you have that confidence. You've done it before. You can draw on that experience. And it's just so important to get over that block and literally, both figuratively, literally, get over that block of things going bad or what's going to happen now and pushing through it. I can't overstate how important that is for our guys.
Well, listen, I think if this team is as mature as we think it is and has the leadership we think it does, both obviously on the field between the players, this could be a stepping stone. You've got a Louisville team that could be 0-2 next up on the schedule. They play UCF tonight. Then you turn around and get a Boston College team that did not look great against Rutgers, although I think Rutgers is probably a better football team than most people believe. They play in a very difficult conference where they have a very good coach. And then, of course, you get Wake Forest the following a week after that, and they got Sam Hartman back. So, listen, that makes it a little bit tougher game. But, you look at the next 3 games, you got to feel like Florida State's got a shot in all 3 of them and it could get off to a super start. And we'll see what happens, and we'll talk more about Louisville next week. All right, guys, we cover all the bases. This is a recruiting / tailgate show, so there's some fashion news we need to talk about. First of all, Jordan Travis has had a T-shirt made with the takeoff of Tiger King, where I guess he's sitting on a throne, obviously making fun of the LSU and taking pride in the win. He's charging $24.23 a shirt. And he's splitting the proceeds with his offensive lineman, Mark. So how do you feel about that?
That's great. He's splitting it with the OL. Yep. Here's what we don't need to happen is we go down to Orlando next year and some LSU guys have a T-shirt underneath their pads. You know what I mean? Yeah. Those kind of things sometimes come back to bite you. So, but kudos to him for having the confidence and the swag to go move forward with that. I don't know that I would.
Well, I might have to buy one of those shirts since he's supporting his offensive lineman. That's probably going to buy him a lot of cred within that locker room. And I know he's got plenty. And then, of course, the breaking news in Tallahassee this morning was the FSU announced on Twitter that it's going to don what I call their stormtroopers uniforms, white helmets, white jerseys, and white pants against Louisville on Friday night on national television. And it's a weird look for me. I've always been a proponent of I'm more of a traditionalist when it comes to uniforms. I like them clean. I like to turn on the television and know who the hell I'm watching play football. I will, of course, know it's Florida State, but it should always be a gold helmet with a arrow on it, in my opinion. But it's not against Friday, and it's listen, it'll get them a lot of attention from players on the recruiting trail. At the end of the day, that's why they're doing it. But Mark, just your thoughts on going away from that traditional gold helmet that has won so many games for Florida State.
At risk of being the get off my lawn guy, get off my lawn.
That's what I feel like.
I mean, get off my lawn, right?
Yeah.
I mean that. I'm not in marketing. I am, but I'm not. If it plays to the crowd, it needs to play to, so be it. But I'm with you. I'm a traditional guy. I think, our brand is strong enough to not have to use gimmicks. And to me, it's kind of gimmicky. But that's like I said, get off my lawn.
Fish.
Yeah, I'm usually I don't mind them altering it a little bit, but all white. It's not part of their it's not part of their natural uniform. I don't know. If that's what the kids like to wear, I guess we're like all becoming like Oregon now, where we all need 30 different uniform combinations to play a game. But I'm not real into it. But I'm not the one making the decisions on it.
It's fashion and football meet. There's no doubt with today's uniforms and all those things. But yeah, it's definitely odd. And listen, I just hope they move better than stormtroopers. Those guys seem a little stiff in Star Wars movies. So I'm just hoping our guys move a little bit better.
They never hit what they're aiming at, do they?
No, they do not.
That's not good.
Han Solo had 1,000 lives.
Exactly.
There's no doubt about that. But it's
that's what we're channeling.
They better play well in them. That's all I got to say, or they'll be retiring them.
Exactly. Kind of like the All Blacks.
I can't wait to see how that goes. All right, so quickly, I want to get into week one. There are a lot of great games. The Pitt West Virginia game was unbelievable. Pitt pulled that out last minute. That was a Thursday night game. We got a good Illinois-Indiana game on Friday night, and then, of course, Saturday was just nuts. Florida, Utah. We watched Alabama just road grade Utah State, and then, of course, probably I don't think it's a surprise to anybody won, but Georgia just, running up and down the field, or Oregon not been able to do anything at all. I believe it was 48-3, 49-3, something like that at the end of the day. What game stood out to you guys most? And, of course, NC State got lucky to win. They won. They got lucky. They should have lost. East Carolina lost 4 points on the board, and left 4 points off the board. And then, of course, North Carolina could not slow down Appy State in a wild 63-61 game that Appy State could have easily won. So what's y'all's takeaway from week one of the college football season?
Yeah, those are the things that kind of raised my eyebrows. First of all, watching Georgia, the thought that went through my head is how well drilled they are. I mean, especially offensively, the throws that Bennett was making, the places he was putting the ball. I mean, the timing on everything. I was like, man, that's a well drilled team. So that kind of stuck out to me. The North Carolina App State and the North Carolina State game kind of raised my eyebrow a little bit. That was interesting. The Gene Chizik area not going off to a great start in Chapel Hill. So that kind of stuck out to me a little bit. And then the uncomfortable feeling I had watching Jeff Collins on Monday night. It's like, you ever watch The Office? And yes. When Michael Scott does like really uncomfortable things and it kind of makes you squirm a little bit to sit there and watch it. That was kind of me watching Jeff Collins try to manage that football game in the first half on Monday night.
Yeah, he is. That's from the way he dresses to the things they do before the game. I think that's weird. I agree with you. That's always uncomfortable to watch. And what do you think of Clemson? What do you think of the quarterback? A lot of questions on him going into the season.
Yeah, I don't think he's kind of solved his issues. His issues are processing information. He's just not a fast processor, and I don't think that's gone away. So, look, I think offensive line wise, I think they're struggling. I was watching that thinking, man, I'm glad we don't have Will Putnam. Defensively though, they look fantastic. They look fast. They look aggressive. They look well drilled. I mean, so their defense is for real. Even though they don't have Venables, but offensively, I think they look like they struggled a little bit.
Fish, what are some of your takeaways from week one?
Well, I'll jump in to talk about the Georgia Tech game. I was surprised it was closer earlier. I actually thought Jeff Sims played really, really well considering the pressure he was under. I think he's improved a lot, but I kind of knew that with Chip Long going there. I think Chip Long's a very good coach. He's probably the best coach on their staff. But I'm still trying to figure out, with 48 seconds left in the first half and 3 timeouts, why Jeff Collins allowed he should have been fired right then and there. And I don't ever ask for coaches to get fired because I don't there's so much that goes into it. And these guys, they got families and stuff. I'm not really one of those guys that says, hey, go fire guys. But man, he was trying to get fired after that game. He was trying to get that payout because that was just horrendous. As far as Clemson, that's the best D-line I've seen in the country. I will take their D-line their D-line's really, really good. The Breezy kid, I didn't know. I knew he was good, but I mean, he's just a different level freak, and their D-line's really special. If Clemson wants to win the conference and play in the playoffs this year, they got to go to the backup quarterback. The one drive he had, they looked way better than I've ever seen DJ look. And DJ does struggle to process, and everything just seems so difficult for him. When they're on, I mean, he needed literally to scramble and throw some wild play to Shipley for them to break that game open when it should have never been close to begin with. And I think, Dabble has to stop convincing himself that DJ can play. He's not their answer. Go with the backup. He's a better quarterback. You'll find out life's a lot easier. As far as the rest of college football, everybody keeps pumping up Alabama. I think they're very good, but man, it's hard to convince me Georgia's not the best team in the country.
You're gonna go out on that limb. Alabama's very good.
No, but I'm just saying, they're saying they're unbeatable. If you told me Georgia's really that, they didn't look like they missed a beat.
No, they didn't.
I mean, it looked like they continued to play from last year. They dominated Oregon. I mean, that game wasn't close.
And the familiarity that Dan Lanning had with that team, you would have thought they'd have been better prepared, right?
Yeah. I mean, listen, Georgia looked and they just look different all across the board. I mean, do they have a weakness on that team? I mean, they honestly look like a national championship contender again.
No, they're 2-3 deep everywhere.
Bo Nix just can't go anywhere where they can win.
Bless his heart.
Yeah.
And hey, how when Kenny Dillingham woke up on Sunday morning, you think he was thinking about Tallahassee at all?
Let me tell you something, and I said this last night on the happy hour. I said, hey, if Kenny Dillingham is our OC, we don't win that game, in my opinion. I don't think I don't think we run. I don't think we commit to the run like we did, even though it wasn't as productive as we had hoped, but it was effective. Right. I think we do maybe some other things that maybe are, what we've seen in the past. I just don't, I believe Alex Atkins being the OC, commitment to the running game, scheming the running game the way we do, even against overloaded and, loaded boxes. I think that was huge for us. That put us in manageable situations on third down, and Jordan was well drilled, and the game plan for those down and distances was outstanding. But I don't think it's that way.
I don't want to take anything away from the players, but I personally feel they schemed. What I liked most is that every time they were in second and long, they did not try to pick it all up at once. They were like, all right, it's 2nd and 15. We just need 7 or 8. Let's just get this. And they kept their offense in plus situations. I've always said, it's unless you got a great quarterback, all right, like Jameis, it could be 3rd and 30, and you're like, all right, he'll get 31. It's very difficult for quarterbacks, I don't care how good they are, to play behind the sticks. And they did a very good job of keeping them in winnable situations constantly. Yeah, they were in some 3rd and longs, but they weren't 3rd and 20s. They weren't 3rd and 18s. where you're basically the defense can pin their ears back and just go, you know what, we're going after the quarterback. And they got the ball out of Jordan's hands quickly. And the run game, I thought, and I said, they're going to run. They need a run for 40 attempts for 200 yards. I was wrong on the total, but they did have 38 attempts. They never went away from it, no matter whether it was successful or not. They kept pounding the ball. And I think that's a big reason why they won the game.
No question. 100%.
Well, they ran it just well enough, right? And it
was effective. It might have not been productive, but it was effective.
Oh, yes. I mean, it wasn't like they were getting stopped a yard down. I mean, they were picking up gains of 7 and 8 yards at times. And, so I'd certainly I think, Mark, you're probably right. The way they look at the game and break down games is probably a little bit different because Alex is the offensive coordinator. But not to kick a duck while he's down, but, I'm sure Kenny had a tough day.
That's okay. He's well compensated to be kicked.
He is well compensated, and as I have, the salaries are outrageous. That guy doesn't have enough of a resume to be making the kind of money he's making. But anyway, whatever. He's a rich man and getting to do what he loves. So you got to be happy about him for that. But anyway, all right. So I wanted to catch one other game from week 1 that kind of surprised me. The score surprised me, not the winner, because they do have a couple of really good skilled players. They got one of the best running backs in the nation, pretty good defensive front. But Syracuse beats Louisville 31-7 in opening weekend. Idea was they got that great running back. When you got a guy that gets hot, you can running the ball, you can beat anybody. But long story short, was a little bit surprised at the score, 31-7. Scott Satterfield is a man that is squarely on the hot seat in Louisville. What was y'all's thoughts when you saw the score? Because I doubt many of us saw the game. I watched some clips of it, but what was your initial thought when you saw Syracuse 31, Louisville 7?
Yeah, I got the game taped. I'm going to watch it this weekend and then watch them also play UCF this weekend. So I'll have a good feel for Louisville. But, yeah, it definitely raised my eyebrow on that one. Now, I don't know if it's because Louisville wasn't ready or they're not as good or Syracuse just got that much better. TBD on that. But it definitely made me sit up and go, oh, okay,
I think the one thing you're going to notice when you watch it, the quarterback for Louisville has never played a game that poorly. And it was not the score is not indicative of the actual outcome of the game. I mean, you look at the game, it was 17-7 for most of the game. Louisville just didn't play well. Like every time they tried to make a play, something bad happened. I mean, they had a wide receiver wide open end zone. The kid was way late on the throw, and he got picked off. I mean, a 50-yard bomb. You're going to be surprised. Like, the game was really, really close, and every time like Louisville tried to make a run, they just self-inflicted wounds. And I don't know if they're going to play that poorly the rest of the year. I still think they're a better team than what they showed. Syracuse didn't do anything great. I mean, they did run the ball well, but and their defense is a lot better than I thought it'd be. But it's just one of those games where everything that could go wrong went wrong. And I think they'll be a little bit better than that the rest of the year than what they showed in that game.
Well, let's hope they got one more bad game left in them.
Yeah.
This week. All right, so let's move on to this week. We got some big games. We're going to kind of go through our picks. Mark's already mentioned it. Louisville at UCF tonight. UCF is a 6-point favorite at home. I'm going UCF all the way. Who do you guys have?
I'm going to go Louisville. I need them to not have their back up against the wall when we play them.
An injured bird is the worst kind of bird to fight. You're right about that. But I think Malik Cunningham got more pub this preseason for a program that is average at best right now. I've watched him play his first start here several years ago, and I just don't think he's developed to the level of his the attention he gets anyway. He's obviously a dynamic runner, but at times is still not a very good passer. But anyway, so that's why I'm going with UCF. I think they got the best total team and might have the better of the two quarterbacks. Fish?
I don't have a good feel either way. The one thing with Louisville, Malik played well at the end of last year. I think that's why he got a lot of hype as he came on strong. I think it'd be good for the ACC and Louisville for them to win that game and come into the FSU game with the 1-1 record, and that you don't want Florida State thinking, oh, this team's 0-2, they're not good. I think a win would help and keep FSU motivated to go into that game and take them seriously and go up there and get a big win. But I'll lean to Louisville. I don't feel good either way. I wouldn't touch the game if we had money on the game, because I don't really trust either team. I don't know what really UCF has this year, so I'll lean to Louisville, but that's a soft push on that side. So.
Well, and another game that if you told me I'd be talking about this game maybe even last year, certainly 5 years ago, I never would have believed it. But number 23, Wake Forest, has to go to a power program in the making, Vanderbilt, to take on the Commodores. They get Sam Hartman back. So that offense should be running on all cylinders. I think it's obviously going to be Wake Forest in a runaway, even though Vandy does look improved in year 2 under Clark Lee. But anybody got Vandy? Anybody think Vandy's going to pull the upset?
No. And I live in Nashville, so no.
All right. Let's go. Southern Miss is at Miami. Miami scored 70 points on
Bethune.
I can't remember who they played last week, but anyway, it was
Bethune.
North Miami High School.
Yes. I feel bad. I got 2 buddies I've worked with at South Florida that are at Bethune, Coach Franks and Coach Canales. So they had a tough week. But long story, so I don't think Southern Miss is not the same Southern Miss that it was 5 or 6 years ago. I think it's Miami in another blowout.
Yeah, easy win for Miami.
All right, now the game that I didn't think I'd want to talk about, but I do just because they look so atrocious on defense against FAMU and App State. North Carolina goes to Georgia State in an odd matchup, but Georgia State's been a tough out for anybody really since Sean Elliott has taken over as the head coach. Any chance North Carolina gets knocked off? They've kind of snuck out 2 wins here late, in the early parts of the season.
Yeah, I can't believe that they would lose to Georgia State, especially after the sirens and the red flags popped up at App State. I don't think Georgia State's as good as App State, not even close. So, yeah, North Carolina.
I mean, App State. What do you call it? Georgia State doesn't have the same type of team as App State. North Carolina has problems on defense. But I said before the season, I think North Carolina's quarterback's better than Sam Howell. That kid's going to be a potential first-round pick down the road. They're explosive on offense. I see this game a double-digit win for the Tar Heels.
Yeah, I agree. I'd love to see Sean Elliott get it. He seems like a great guy, a good coach, and like the way his teams play. But North Carolina's going to get, Gene Chiglett's going to get this straightened out on defense at some point. But it needs to happen sooner rather than later, because I think they go into back into the conference after this. A game that will be of interest to ACC fans. It's an interleague game. Can Virginia Tech pry itself off the floor against Boston College after getting beat by Old Dominion last week and just a crazy finish there in Virginia Beach? Boston College lost by, I think, a point or 2 to Rutgers. Looked very average on offense, fairly good on defense. I believe Virginia Tech is a 2.5 point favorite at home. Fish, who you got with the Hokies or the Eagles?
Yeah, I got BC. I think they got the better quarterback. Virginia Tech's a major rebuild. I think the coach is a good coach, but their fans are going to have like Frank Beamer patience, because he has to rebuild that whole team. I think it's going to take a while. BC had a tough loss last week. I think they'll come back this week, and I think their quarterback will have a really good game and come back, and they'll pull out a victory.
Did you say Virginia Tech were favorites at home?
Yeah, they're a 2.5 point favorite at home.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's easy money, I think.
Yeah,
I agree with Fish. I think Virginia Tech is a rebuild. They got, you got a new guy in there trying to establish a culture. Don't know anything about that, but so yeah, I'll take BC all day on that one.
Yeah, I'm going with the best quarterback, and I'm not sure Virginia Tech has one. And it does look to be after watching that ODU game, which I'll watch more than I wanted to, but it was a good game. But yeah, I'm going Boston College. They got the best quarterback out of the two teams, and I think that they will. I think they'll run away with it by 10 points or so. I was surprised at Virginia Tech, but that is a hard place to play at night. They get Sandman going and be dark. That stadium will be loud to start. They have great fans at Virginia Tech. The game of the week in the ACC and quite possibly the SEC, Tennessee at 24, Tennessee at 17, Pitt, 3:30 on ABC. Pitt is a 6-point underdog at home. Obviously, Josh Heupel has got Tennessee, looks like it's headed in the right direction. Who you guys taking in this one?
Man, that's a good one. The defensive guy against the offensive wizard, right? I'll take the defensive guy. I'm going to be a homer and go ACC and say Pitt.
Fish
at home.
Well, one thing is I think Narduzzi deserves a lot of credit. I mean,
yeah.
They won the conference last year. It's easy for them to have had a down game last week. They pulled it out. He's done a great job. I think Tennessee's a little ahead this year. I still think Pitt has some things to work out, especially at quarterback. I think he did well at times last week, a little inconsistent. I'll take Tennessee just because I think they're the better team right now. I think Pitt will be better as the year goes on, but I think it's going to be another good game. It wouldn't shock me if Pitt won, but I'll lean with the Vols.
Yeah, I'm going to go Pitt. I don't know. Listen, that Tennessee offense, when Heupel has it going, can be very productive and scary at times. They move at such a high pace. I think listen, Pitt's got to – they come off an emotional win over West Virginia, probably the more physical of the two games. So Tennessee probably goes in a little fresher, even though it's only week 2 of the season. But I'm going to go with Pitt at home, and I think it'll be very close. But if Pitt struggles on offense, they're going. It could be hard. But it's got a very good defensive front seven, so we'll see how that holds up against the Vols and Hendon Hooker. But I'll go Pitt. And then, of course, a couple other games of interest. I think we're all probably picking Alabama with Alabama plays at Texas, a look at the SEC to come. I think it's going to be a great benchmark for Steve Sarkisian and the followers of the Longhorn program to see how far they have to go. Is there any chance that Texas stays close with Bama as a 20-point underdog at home?
No. And in fact, I predict that there will be an upside-down horn 15-yard penalty.
What? Oh, yes.
Yeah, one of those.
Hey, did you see where that Saban did not know that was a penalty?
Yeah, that's why I said that, yeah.
He found out in a press conference. Fish, exactly. What do you think?
I think Texas could keep it close for maybe a half, but I just think Alabama will wear them out and pull away and probably cover that number pretty easily. They're just a better team. I mean, they're recruiting a lot better at Texas, and they're going to be really good next year. But they talked about it. I was listening to one of these shows, I think yesterday. They have 8 or 10 freshmen, and they're too deep. A lot of them are starting. I mean, that's not a way to go into the Alabama game with a bunch of 2 freshmen starting on the whole line. I don't know if that's a recipe for success. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Will Anderson may make his NFL first-round pick highlight film off of this game.
You're right. You're right. Yeah, it's gonna. I think they're gonna throttle Texas, and we'll see. Then they can. I think, are they ranked number 1 or number 2? Is Alabama 1 or 2 going into this game? 1, right?
Yeah, they're ranked number 1 in the country.
All right, then our last game, we'll finish it up with the boys down in the middle part of the state. Florida Gators, a 6-point favorite at home over 20th ranked Kentucky. Florida was unranked going into this first weekend, and boy, they catapulted all the way to 12th in the nation. Can Mark Stoops, who has done probably as good a job as anybody in America since he's been at Kentucky, can they go in there and get another win against Florida?
Yes. Absolutely. I mean, without any deep analysis, because I don't know Kentucky all that well, but I mean, Florida played out of their mind. I think they had the advantage, the home advantage against Utah. You know, they did look good. I got to admit it. They did look pretty good. That quarterback looked great, but I can't pick the Gators anyways. So it's purely a heart pick.
Fish, who you got?
Hey, listen, I always like to throw a little jingle on some of these games, but listen, the Utah dominated, I thought, or controlled that game most of the game, and you saw at halftime Florida was leading. If you had watched the first half, you're like, how's Florida leading? Utah had controlled it. Even in the second half, when they needed a drive, Utah drove all the way down the field. I think coaching cost them that game, throwing the ball. All they had to do was play for a field goal, and I think they would have won in overtime. I give Florida a lot of credit. They did a great job. I think Richardson played as well as you can, but Stoops is a great defensive coordinator, and I think he's going to have some stuff to really confuse Anthony Richardson this week. I could see Florida winning, but it will be under that number. I'd take the 6 points, and that could be a game that is 27-24. It's going to come down the wire, and Kentucky could pull it out in the end, but I definitely think it's going to be a lot closer. And I'll lean towards Kentucky to cover the spread and possibly pull out the win there. So,
yeah, I'm going to go with Kentucky just because it's hard to pull for the Gators. And I'll have a lot more interest in the game if I'm pulling for the opponent. But anyway, listen, my takeaway was another one of those games that was, boy, what a game.
Great game.
It was fun to watch that Utah game. But I walked away from that going, how the hell did Anthony Richardson not start for this team last year? So,
yeah, that's why their coach got fired.
He is an impressive young man, and glad we don't have to pay him until he's been through the SEC schedule. So.
Yep.
But anyway, guys, we could sit here and talk about college football forever, and I would if we all had time. But we've all got things we got to do. I want to thank you guys for joining me for a split session of Reeling the Men / Osceola Tailgate, and we will be back next week with Seminole Sidelines previewing Louisville, and then of course with our tailgate show and possibly another.
There he is.
Fish finally shows his face.
Face made for radio.
That's right. Fish, you're probably going to have to turn it into just a podcast only because of you, but that's fine.
No, you can still do it. You don't have to listen. Just show my little silhouette, man. We're good.
All right. Well, Mark, I'll let you take us out as always.
Go Noles, baby.